Calvin Rusk set a coffee can on the county sale table and let the room look at it. Inside were $1,400 in folded bills. Not a cashier's check, not a bank draft, not the kind of money men in pressed jackets respect. Just old 20s and 10s, flattened by years in a drawer. Warren Pike looked at the can, then he looked at Calvin, then he smiled the way a man smiles when he has already decided the ending. $1,400, Pike said, loud enough for the back row. Mr. Rusk, that won't buy the survey stakes on that tract. A few people laughed. Calvin did not. He pushed the coffee can forward with 2 fingers. I can pay the balance monthly, he said. $75, first Monday of every month. This time the laugh came easier. There were 36 people inside the Boone County property room that morning. Most of them standing, because the folding chairs had been taken by men with clean boots and clipboards. The parcel on the screen was Tract 12, 116 acres on Bear Wallow Ridge, 3 miles past the last paved bend, where the old tobacco benches gave way to shale, sour clay, and scrub pine. The county description called it depleted agricultural ground. The appraisal report called it non-productive. The auctioneer, trying to sound kinder than the paper, called it a challenging rural holding. Everybody else called it dead dirt. And from the back of the room, Lonnie Vale said what half the county was thinking. Only thing growing up there is disappointment. Calvin heard him. He had known Monty since both of them still had black hair. He had borrowed fence wire from him once. He had helped pull his truck out of a ditch in 1998. That did not make the comment hurt more, it just made it cheaper. Warren Pike tapped the edge of the sale packet with a gold pen. He was the regional assets manager for Ridgewell Agricultural Credit, 43 years old, careful beard, clean cuffs, the steady confidence of a man who had never had to fix anything with baling wire at dark. Ridgewell had taken Bear Wallow Ridge after the Mills family lost the land 2 winters earlier. They had tried to sell it 3 times. The first asking price had been $58,000, then $34,000, then $19,000. Nobody moved. The last soil report showed low organic matter, shallow stone, poor drainage, and clay acidity bad enough to turn hope into paperwork. For Ridgewell, the property was a stain on a quarterly report. For the county, it was one more exhausted ridge. For Calvin Rusk, it was the first piece of ground he had ever seen that was honest all the way down. Pike leaned back. Mr. Rusk, if you miss one payment, the default clause returns full control to Ridgewell without appeal. You understand that? I read it. You read Section 9. I read the whole thing. Pike's smile thinned. Then we have an agreement. He held out his hand. Calvin shook it with his left. The right hand stayed against his coat. It always did when strangers were watching. 3 fingers on that hand had been crushed in a pug mill at a ceramics plant outside Parkersburg 19 years earlier. They had healed crooked. He had learned to sign left-handed, eat left-handed, work around pain, and let people underestimate the hand they could see. Pike noticed. Most men like Pike noticed everything except the part that mattered. When Calvin stepped into the cold, his sister Ruth was waiting beside his truck. She had not gone inside. She had refused to watch people laugh at him in a public building. You bought it, she said. Calvin set the empty coffee can on the passenger floor. I signed for it. That is not the same as buying it. No. She looked toward the property room doors, then back at him. Cal, that ridge broke 3 families. It broke their crops. What's the difference? He opened the driver's door. The crop was never what I was buying. Ruth stared at him, but he did not add anything. He had kept the thing quiet for 46 years. He was not going to start explaining it in a parking lot. What Calvin knew was folded inside an old tobacco tin under the truck seat. The tin had once held twist tobacco his father used to cut with a pocket knife. Now it held paper. Not many papers, only the ones that mattered. Certified mail receipts. Money order stubs. Copies of every lease Calvin had ever signed. A plant injury settlement from 2007, a photograph of his father standing in a field with 2 mules and a cigarette hanging from his lip. And at the very bottom, inside a plastic sleeve cracked yellow at the seam, was a copied page from a forgotten industrial survey. In 1978, a refractory company out of Ohio had tested clay seams across the western edge of West Virginia. They were searching for furnace brick material. Most of what they found was ordinary, some of it was useless, but on Bear Wallow Ridge, their drill team had recorded a pale clay layer beneath the upper shale, a layer with unusually low iron staining and a particle behavior that did not match common red clay. The company did not pursue it. They wanted cheap brick clay near rail access, and Bear Wallow Ridge had neither. The report was boxed, shelved, misfiled, and forgotten.
Calvin found it in 1980, when he was 24, sweeping floors at the McClure ceramics plant and taking night classes in industrial materials because he wanted a job that used his head before his back gave out. He was supposed to be looking for kiln maintenance logs. He found the survey instead. He read the Bear Wallow page 3 times. Then he copied it by hand during his lunch break, marking the layer depth, the clay behavior, and the test language the engineers had underlined and then ignored. Low iron, fine plate structure, high whiteness after firing. 3 plain phrases. But to a man who would spend the next 27 years feeding raw material into kilns, watching color change by degrees, and learning which minerals lied under heat and which ones told the truth, those 3 phrases meant possibility. Not a miracle, not treasure, possibility. And possibility, if you understand it early enough, can sit quietly in a tobacco tin longer than most men can sit with a secret. Calvin drove to Bear Wallow that afternoon before he went home. The land looked worse in person than it had on paper. Winter grass lay flat and silver. Old tobacco rows still showed as tired ridges under the weeds. Rain had cut shallow channels down the slopes and left orange streaks where iron water bled through the clay. Pine roots gripped the bank like fingers. Flat shelves of shale broke the surface in long gray scars. From the road, it looked exactly like the kind of place no sensible man would buy. That was useful. Calvin walked the lower bench first, then the middle slope, then the east shoulder where the survey had marked the pale layer. He carried an iron soil auger over one shoulder, old, heavy, and awkward enough that a younger man would have replaced it with something new. At the shoulder of the ridge, he set the auger point into the ground and turned it. 1 foot, nothing. 2 feet, red clay. 3 feet, shale grit. At 42 inches, the handle changed in his palms. The ground stopped resisting like soil. It started resisting like something compact, clean, and settled. Calvin turned once more, lifted the auger, and saw a ribbon of clay on the blade, so pale it seemed wrong against the orange mud around it. Not white like chalk, white like porcelain before fire. He touched it with his thumb. The clay was smooth, too smooth for common ridge clay. He rolled a fleck between his fingers and watched it smear without grit. Then he put it back into the hole, packed the top with red clay, and brushed the auger clean with dead grass. He did not smile. Smiling is what people do when they want the world to know they have won. Calvin had not won anything yet. He had only confirmed the ground was still telling the same story it had told in 1978. That night he moved into the old corn crib at the edge of the parcel. He could not afford lumber for a cabin and he did not want permits, utility visits, or questions. The crib roof leaked at the south corner. He patched it with sheet metal pulled from a collapsed shed and wired a canvas tarp against the wind. It was not comfortable. It was enough. He brought a cot, a 2-burner stove, 3 wool blankets, a kerosene lantern, and a lockbox small enough to slide beneath a crate of tools. In March, he planted rye on the lower bench and corn on the flatter ground above it. People saw that, and laughed less softly. Because a man planting a field gives a county something to measure him by. The rye came in weak. The corn yellowed early. Calvin expected both. The planting was not the plan. The planting was camouflage with roots. Every morning before sunup, he walked the east shoulder with the auger. He took samples in baby food jars Ruth had saved for him from the church kitchen. Each jar got a number, a depth, a coordinate, and a date written on masking tape in his small, left-handed script. He worked in lines, 10 paces apart. Then 5, then 2. By late April, he had enough points to draw a boundary. The pale clay did not run across the whole ridge. It ran under the eastern shoulder in a body nearly 40 acres wide, thickening where the slope dipped before the pine break. 40 acres was not a mountain. It was not a mine you could brag about on television. But if the purity was what the old report hinted, 40 acres was enough to change a supply chain, and enough to get a quiet man robbed if he spoke too soon. Lonnie Vale saw the jars first. He had driven up to the fence line with coffee in one hand and curiosity in the other. Lonnie farmed leased hay ground down the road, and had always been the kind of neighbor who wanted to know more than he needed to know. "What are you doing with those little jars, Cal?" "Soil. Looks like dirt to me." "Most of it is." Lonnie laughed, waiting for more. Calvin gave him nothing. By May, the crop had begun failing in a way nobody could miss. The rye thinned into strips, the corn stood knee-high and pale, leaves curled like old paper. At the feed store, the jokes returned with better timing. Warren Pike heard every one of them. He was still watching the payment file. $75 came in February, $75 in March, $75 in April. Always by money order, always sent certified mail, always signed for at the Ridgewell branch. That irritated him. He had structured the deal because he expected Calvin Rusk to miss a payment before summer. A missed payment would return the land to Ridgewell. Ridgewell already had a buyer waiting, a land-holding company that had begun acquiring mineral rights near the county line. Pike knew enough not to ask why they wanted dead dirt. He also knew enough to know that if someone else wanted a thing, the bank should not have sold it for $1,400 down. By June, irritation had become concern. Because Calvin was not acting like a man trying to save a crop. He was acting like a man measuring something. Pike asked Lonnie to keep an eye on the situation. Those were the words he used. Clean words. The kind that do not show dirt until later. Lonnie kept an eye on it. Then he kept a notebook. Then he started meeting Pike every other Thursday at a diner off Route 85, where the coffee tasted burned, and neither man looked at the envelope when it crossed the table. $8,000 can make a weak man feel practical. Lonnie told himself he was not hurting Calvin. He was just passing along what he saw. When a person needs money badly enough, the distance between those two sentences can disappear. Calvin did not know about the envelope yet, but he knew about small movements. A jar turned label out when he had left a label in. A boot print near the crib door that did not match his. A latch hook from the outside in a way his own hands never did. So he changed nothing visible. He only added one thing. A game camera, cheap and weatherproof, tucked into the rafters of the corn crib behind a strip of hanging burlap. It faced the workbench where the sample jars sat in order. He checked the batteries every Sunday. He kept walking the ridge. He kept mailing payments. He kept letting the county think the dead field was beating him. By the second week of July, the crop was done, not damaged, done. The corn had stopped at waist height, the leaves had gone gray-green. The rye lay thin in the heat. From the road, Bearwallow Ridge looked like every smart person had been right. Calvin climbed to the east shoulder at noon, when nobody with sense was working outside, and dug a clean test pit with a narrow trenching shovel. At 38 inches, the red clay ended. At 41, the pale layer began. He shaved it with the shovel edge and filled a glass spice jar.
This time he did not put the sample with the others. He wrapped it in a handkerchief, tucked it inside his coat pocket, and drove north before dark.
The Ceratec Materials Lab sat behind a chain-link fence in Parkersburg, 3 low buildings of brick and glass built around the old plant Calvin remembered. The tall smokestack was gone. The loading bay had been rebuilt. The air no longer smelled of coal heat and wet clay, but the shape of the place still knew him. At the security desk, a young guard asked who he was there to see. Dr. Lila Sarin. Do you have an appointment? No. The guard glanced at Calvin's old coat, his crooked right hand, the spice jar wrapped in a handkerchief, and decided exactly what kind of problem he was. Dr. Sarin doesn't take walk-ins. Calvin stepped aside, took out a notebook, and called a number he had not used in 12 years. It rang 6 times. Then a woman's voice answered. Sarin. It's Calvin Rusk. Silence moved across the line. Not dead silence. Remembering silence. Calvin, she said, where are you? Your lobby. Don't leave. 7 minutes later, Lila Sarin came through the glass doors in a lab coat with reading glasses in one pocket and a pencil stuck in her hair. She was 58 now, though the quickness in her eyes had not aged much. She had been a junior materials engineer when Calvin still had all 10 fingers working. He had taught her how to smell sulfur contamination before the kiln instruments caught it. She had taught him the math behind what he already knew with his hands. She looked at him once, then at the handkerchief. You brought me something. I did. Is it trouble? Could be. She took him upstairs. The analysis room was brighter than the old one, cleaner, with machines that did in minutes what used to take half a shift. Calvin stood back while Lila opened the jar, touched the clay with a spatula, and stopped talking. That was when he knew. Not because of the machine, because of her face. People who understand materials go quiet around good material. The first test took 14 minutes. The second took 26. She ran a firing whiteness check, a low iron scan, and a particle size distribution twice because she did not trust good news the first time it knocked. When the screen finally settled, she removed her glasses. Where did this come from? My land. How much land? 116 acres. How much of this layer? 40 acres I can prove from auger points. Maybe more. She looked back at the screen. Calvin, this is not brick clay. I know. This is high-purity kaolin. Very low iron. Very consistent particle behavior. The kind used in technical ceramics, filtration components, battery separator coatings, specialty porcelain. Domestic sources this clean are not common. That's what I thought. She turned slowly. You thought? I had an old survey. How old? 46 years. Lila stared at him with a kind of professional disbelief that did not insult him. You waited 46 years to buy the hill above it. I waited until the hill got cheap enough. She almost laughed, but the number on the screen stopped her. What does Ridgewell know? Nothing. What does the county know? That my corn died. Good. Keep it that way for as long as possible. She printed the results. 3 copies. Then she put one in a sealed envelope with Ceratec's letterhead and signed across the flap. Before you let anyone touch that ground, you need counsel, a mineral title review, and a supply agreement that gives you a shield. Not a handshake. Not a promise. A signed purchase framework with legal backing. I own mineral rights. Are you certain? It was on page 7. I made them initial it. For the first time that day, Lila smiled. There he is. 2 weeks later, Ceratec sent a preliminary purchase agreement to a post office box Calvin kept in Charleston. He read it in the truck with the windows down and a pencil behind his ear. Guaranteed annual purchase minimum. Testing and extraction support. Legal defense for title disputes. No transfer of ownership. No surrender of mineral rights. He marked 2 clauses, mailed it back, and waited. The corrected agreement came 5 days later.
He signed it with his left hand at the corn crib table while rain ticked through the trees and the dead crop stood black against the wet field. That same week, Warren Pike made his mistake. He had received a report from Lonnie that Calvin had driven north, returned with a sealed envelope, and moved half the sample jars from the bench to the lockbox under his tools. Pike called the land holding company. Then he called a lawyer. Then he logged into Ridgewell's payment system. The June payment was there. So was July.
So was August. All certified. All received. Pike did not need all of them gone. Only one. The default clause did not require a pattern. It required a single missed payment. He chose April because April sat far enough back to look plausible, and close enough to matter. He deleted the intake record from the system, printed a clean account summary, and told himself the certified receipt could be explained as a branch stamping error. Men who have always had systems protect them often forget that systems also remember. The default notice arrived on a Tuesday morning in September. A black pickup came up the track and stopped at the fence. Two men stepped out, both wearing boots too new for the mud. One held an envelope. "Mr. Rusk, we're serving notice on behalf of Ridgewell Agricultural Credit." Calvin took it. He read it while they watched. According to the notice, his April payment had never been received. Under Section 9, the tract reverted immediately to Ridgewell. As compensation for improvements made in good faith, the bank was offering him $200. $200 for the crop, for the months of work, for the paper in the tobacco tin, for 46 years of waiting. Calvin folded the notice along its crease. "All right," he said. The younger man blinked. "All right? I got it. You understand you have to vacate the property." Calvin looked at the ridge behind them, then back at the envelope. "I understand what the paper says." He walked to the corn crib, shut the door, and took the tobacco tin from under the tool crate. Inside was the April money order stub, the certified mail receipt, the green return card signed by a Ridgewell branch clerk, the account copy he had requested in May, showing the April payment posted before Pike deleted it. He set them in order. Then he opened the lockbox and removed the memory card from the game camera. The footage was not dramatic. It was not movie evidence. It was better. It was clear. Lonnie Vale entering the crib at 6:42 p.m. on a Thursday, Lonnie photographing the sample jars. Lonnie lifting the Ceratec envelope from the workbench. Lonnie making a phone call while standing beneath the camera he had not seen. The audio was thin, but it held enough. Yeah, he went to Parkersburg. Came back with lab papers. The white clays from the east shoulder. "Pike, I don't know what it is, but he sure as hell does."
Calvin watched it once, then he copied it to 2 drives, put one in the tin, one in a padded envelope, and drove to Charleston to meet the attorney Lila had already warned him he would need. The next 8 weeks looked quiet from the road. Calvin still rose before dawn, still worked on the tractor, still walked the ridge, still let the county talk. Lonnie drove past twice a day and saw nothing change. That comforted him. Warren Pike filed a contingent transfer agreement with the land holding company for $290,000, pending resolution of what he called an administrative possession issue. Ceratec's lawyers filed an injunction. Calvin's attorney filed a response. A forensic records specialist pulled Ridgewell's system logs and found the deletion in 12 minutes. Not 12 days. 12 minutes. The record had not vanished. It had been removed manually from a terminal assigned to Warren Pike, using Warren Pike's credentials, at 4:18 p.m. on August 27th. The same forensic pull showed 2 other distressed farm tracts where payment records had been altered before repossession. 1 was an error. 2 were a pattern. 3 were a map. The hearing was set for November 18th.
The Boone County Courthouse was old enough to make everyone lower their voice without being told. Stone steps, dark rails, a clock over the entrance that had been 5 minutes slow for as long as anyone could remember. Calvin arrived at 7:30 with the tobacco tin under his arm. No suit, no polished shoes, no attempt to look like anything other than the man who had walked Bearwallow Ridge before breakfast. Warren Pike arrived at 8:45 with 4 attorneys and the gold pen in his jacket pocket. He saw Calvin on the bench, saw the tin, and looked away. Lonnie Vale sat in the back row in a clean shirt that made him look more guilty than dirt ever could. Judge Maribel Stokes took the bench at 9 exactly. She was 62, blunt, and known in 3 counties for disliking 2 things: wasted time and clever paperwork. She had the default notice in front of her. She had Ridgewell's account summary. She had Calvin's receipts. She had the forensic report. She looked over her glasses at Ridgewell's lead attorney.
Your client says no April payment was received. That is correct, Your Honor. Judge Stokes lifted Calvin's certified return card. This card shows Ridgewell signed for an April payment envelope. The attorney nodded with a practiced look of regret. Branch intake irregularities happen, Your Honor. The judge looked at him. That is a sentence. It is not an explanation. No one laughed. She turned to Calvin's attorney. Proceed. The attorney stood, placed the money order stub, the return card, and the May account copy into evidence. Then he introduced the forensic system log. No speech, no anger, just the sequence. Payment received, payment posted, payment later deleted. Deletion tied to Pike's terminal. Deletion tied to Pike's credentials. Judge Stokes read the report.
The room changed while she read it. You could feel it. There is a silence that comes from confusion, and there is a silence that comes from understanding too much at once. This was the second kind. She looked up. Mr. Pike. Pike's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, my client has been advised not to answer questions that may implicate ongoing internal review. That may be the first wise advice I've heard from your side this morning. She turned a page. Now explain the third-party surveillance. Calvin's attorney introduced the game camera footage. The clerk played the relevant portion on a monitor turned toward the bench. Lonnie's face appeared in grainy gray light. Lonnie's hand lifted the lab envelope. Lonnie's voice said the words white clay and Pike in the same sentence. The judge did not look at Lonnie first. She looked at Pike. That was worse. Ridgewell's attorney requested a recess. Judge Stokes gave him 10 minutes. It took 8. When the lawyers returned, Ridgewell withdrew the default notice, conceded that the April payment had been received, and agreed to maintain Calvin's ownership and installment terms while a formal internal investigation proceeded. Judge Stokes wrote for a moment. Then she spoke slowly. The default is void. The contingent transfer is suspended. The plaintiff remains owner of Bearwallow Ridge, including all mineral rights conveyed under the sale agreement. Pike stared at the table. The gold pen in his pocket did not help him. The judge continued. The court will refer the forensic findings to the State Banking Commissioner and the United States Attorney's Office for review. If Ridgewell believes this matter ends with withdrawal of a defective notice, Ridgewell is mistaken. She looked at Calvin. Mr. Rusk, anything for the record? Calvin stood. His right hand stayed against his coat, his left rested on the tobacco tin. No, ma'am, he said. The paper speaks fine. That was all. By noon, Warren Pike was suspended. By 3, his office badge no longer opened the Ridgewell branch door. By the end of the week, Lonnie Vale had told 3 different versions of the same story to 3 different officials, and none of them improved with repetition. The land holding company tried to reopen negotiations through a different channel. Calvin's attorney did not return the first call. He returned the second, and said all future offers would need to begin after Saratech's existing agreement, not before it. That ended the misunderstanding. In December,
Calvin signed the final Ceratec supply contract in Lila Saren's office. It did not make him a billionaire. That was not the story. The contract guaranteed $840,000 in annual purchase commitments for the first 7 years, indexed after that, with Calvin retaining ownership of the land, the clay body, and the right to refuse any extraction method that damaged the remaining ridge. Lila watched him sign. "What are you going to do now?" Calvin capped the pen. "Fix the crib roof." She waited. "After that, there's a culvert washing out on the lower road." Calvin. He looked out the window at the plant yard where trucks moved between buildings, carrying material most people would never think about, to become things they would use every day without knowing where they began. Then he looked back at her. "I waited 46 years to get work worth doing on my own ground. I don't plan to waste it acting rich." She smiled at that, not because it was quaint, because she believed him. When Calvin returned to Bearwallow Ridge, the county had already begun rearranging the story. The people who had laughed now remembered being curious. The people who had mocked now remembered being cautious. Lonnie stopped coming up the road. Ruth came once a week with soup, bread, and questions he answered only when the questions needed answering. Ceratec's survey crew arrived in January, polite and careful. They set their flags along the east shoulder, drilled 3 narrow cores, and pulled the pale clay into daylight in clean cylinders. At 41 inches, the color changed. At 50, it brightened. At 72, the layer was still running. The crew chief, a young man with a graduate degree and mud on his knees, held 1 core up in the winter light. "I've never seen ridge kaolin this clean." Calvin looked at it. He had. In his head, for 46 years. That was enough. A local reporter came in February after the banking investigation became public. She stood at the fence with a camera operator and asked Calvin what it felt like to prove everyone wrong. He thought about the property room, the laughter, Pike's gold pen, Lonnie's notebook, the pale clay on the auger, Lila's face in the lab, the judge saying the default was void. Then he looked at Bearwallow Ridge. "It felt like keeping receipts," he said. The reporter waited for a bigger answer. Calvin did not give her one. Because the real answer was not made for a microphone. The real answer was under his boots. A poor field on paper. A failed crop above it. A pale clay seam below it. A man patient enough to know the difference. That spring, the lower bench grew rye again. Not strong, but better. Calvin still mailed $75 on the first Monday of every month. He still kept the stub. He still slid each receipt into the tobacco tin where the old survey lay folded at the bottom. People asked why he kept paying when the contract money had already begun. He told them the truth. A debt is not finished because a man can afford to ignore it. It is finished when he pays it. By summer, the roof no longer leaked. The lower road had a new culvert. The tractor ran cleaner than it had in years. The east shoulder carried flags, survey stakes, and the low organized movement of people who finally understood what the ridge had been hiding. Calvin moved through all of it the same way he had moved through the laughter, carefully, quietly, with no need to hurry the part that had already taken most of his life. He had not bought a dead field. He had bought the truth underneath it. And when the men with clean boots came to take it from him, they discovered what patient people build when nobody is impressed. Receipts, proof, memory, and a piece of ground that had been waiting for someone who knew how to listen.